I am the strongest bridge in your body. Yet right now, I am snapping under the weight of your every stride.
We need to look closely at what happens inside your heel before that dull ache turns into a permanent injury. So let us dive deep into the silent struggle of the Achilles tendon together. Imagine me as a heavy-duty steel cable designed to pull your entire world forward.
Every time your foot hits the pavement, I absorb a massive surge of kinetic force, acting as your primary shock absorber. However, lately you have been pushing the absolute limits of my elasticity. I am stretching beyond my natural capacity, and those tiny, invisible micro-tears are starting to scream for mercy. On various running forums, you will see common reactions where enthusiasts say, "It is just a little morning stiffness, I can run through it." Or another user might claim their heel feels like it is being pinched by a red-hot pair of pliers.
These are not just casual observations, they are the collective cries of an overworked community facing the same mechanical fatigue.
We often celebrate the distance we cover, but we rarely acknowledge the structural fraying occurring beneath the skin. When the demand for high-impact movement exceeds my ability to self-repair, my fibers begin to weaken like a cable ready to snap.
Let us explore together why this vital connection is failing and how we can manage this breakdown before it halts your journey entirely. Now, think back to that first week of running. You're feeling invincible, right? That's the dangerous newbie euphoria we need to talk about.
You see, when you're just starting, every mile feels like a victory, and that rush often acts as a biological blindfold. You might feel a slight nagging tightness in your Achilles, but instead of resting, you push harder, thinking it's just the burn of progress. We've all seen those common comments on fitness threads where someone says, "Just run through it. The pain will vanish once you warm up."
Or perhaps the classic, "My legs are just adjusting to the grind." This collective misunderstanding of pain is the perfect recipe for disaster.
We are essentially trading long-term health for short-term ego. What starts as a minor irritation is actually your tendon screaming for a break, yet the excitement keeps us moving until the damage becomes chronic. It's a psychological trap where the joy of the run blinds us to the reality of the injury, turning a healthy habit into a painful setback.
Let's look closer at why our minds choose to ignore these vital signals and how that early enthusiasm can carry a heavy price.
For a dedicated marathoner, that sharp twinge in the heel is never just a physical sensation. It is the haunting sound of a ticking clock on a career built through years of sweat and sacrifice.
We often discuss the physical limits of the human body, but have you ever considered the psychological trap of the elite athlete?
It is a specialized kind of fear, the dread that a single missed training session signifies the beginning of the end.
You might find yourself questioning, why do we continue to run when every step feels like a knife in the heel? It is because we are often victims of our own grit.
In the digital age, we see this played out in every running forum.
One netizen recently commented that resting feels like a betrayal of one's goals, while another added that pain is just weakness leaving the body. This dangerous push-through-it philosophy creates a toxic cycle where we ignore the body's whispers until they become screams. We treat our Achilles like an unbreakable machine, yet when we ignore those initial warning signs of tendonitis in favor of hitting a weekly mileage goal, we aren't being brave, we are being reckless.
Let us look deeper into this obsession, where the fear of falling behind actually leads to the very career-ending injury we are trying to outrun. It is a profound irony that the same mental toughness required to finish a marathon is often the very thing that prevents a runner from seeking the treatment they so desperately need. Think of me as the silent observer right beneath your soles, witnessing every microsecond of your journey.
While you are focused on the finish line, I am feeling the catastrophic shift that happens every time your foot strikes the concrete.
You might be wondering why that nagging pain in your heel will not go away, and from my vantage point, the answer is clear. It is all about the alignment. When your foot tilts inward just a fraction too much, I feel the force distribution turn chaotic.
Instead of a smooth transition, the pressure spikes unevenly, placing a brutal, twisting strain directly onto your Achilles tendon. It is a common topic in running forums, where you will see netizens debating whether to push through the grit or stop before it snaps. One typical comment often reads, "I thought my shoes were just worn out, but it turns out my stride was tearing me apart from the inside." Let us look closer at this mechanical failure.
Your Achilles is like a high-tension bridge cable, but when your axis is off, that cable is being pulled sideways. It is not just running, it is a repetitive structural overload that turns a minor imbalance into a chronic nightmare. Now, let's dive into what many of you have been debating in the comments section recently.
We've all seen that one runner who insists that their high-end, carbon-plated shoes are a magical shield against all injuries. One frustrated netizen recently posted, "I spent $300 on the latest technology, yet my Achilles is still screaming after every 5-mile run." This brings us to a crucial realization, that gear is only as good as the mechanics behind it. Think of your Achilles tendon as the primary spring in your body's suspension system.
If you're overstriding and landing heavily on your heel far in front of your center of gravity, you're essentially slamming your brakes while trying to accelerate. This creates a violent, repetitive tug-of-war on the tendon. We really need to focus on a mid-foot strike, keeping our landing underneath our hips to distribute that load effectively across the entire lower limb.
When choosing your next pair of shoes, don't just go for the flashiest aesthetic. You should be looking for the specific drop and arch support that complements your natural gait, rather than trying to mask poor form with excessive cushioning. It is all about finding that perfect synergy between the rubber on the road and the internal rhythm of your stride to keep those tendons healthy and your performance peaking.
Step into the digital coliseum where the debate over Achilles tendonitis management rages on between the titans of Reddit and the gurus of YouTube. You have likely seen this clash in your feed, where one side swears by the numbing relief of ice while the other demands you keep moving. One top-voted comment on a popular running subreddit argues that icing is merely a band-aid, a temporary mask that ignores the mechanical failure of the tendon.
They claim that if you are not loading that tissue through eccentric exercises, you are essentially letting your calf muscle wither away. On the other hand, the YouTube comment sections are often flooded with runners pleading for immediate relief, insisting that without cold therapy to quell the initial fire of inflammation, they cannot even take a single step. You might be wondering, who is actually right? Is it about freezing the pain or forcing the function? This philosophical divide highlights a massive shift in how we perceive recovery.
While the old school screams for rest and ice to stop swelling, the modern consensus is leaning heavily toward controlled, progressive loading to stimulate cellular repair. It is a fascinating tug-of-war between immediate comfort and long-term structural integrity that every runner needs to navigate. Let us look deeper into why this tension exists and how you can find the middle ground between these two polarized worlds.
Now, we need to address a trap that many of you fall into, and it is often touted as the ultimate cure: absolute, total rest. You have probably seen those comments in running forums where someone says, "Just stop running entirely for a month and the pain will vanish." It sounds like safe advice, right?
But in the world of physical therapy, we see this as a potential death sentence for your tendon's future performance. You see, your Achilles tendon is like a sophisticated high-tension spring.
If you stop putting any load on it, that spring does not just magically repair itself into a stronger version. It actually becomes brittle and loses its tolerance. This leads to a cycle of weakness where the tendon forgets how to handle the impact of your stride. I have seen netizens argue intensely about this, with one runner famously remarking that after 2 months of bed rest, their first mile back felt like stepping on glass.
That is because tendons require progressive loading to stay healthy. When you choose total inactivity, you are not resting the injury. You are deconditioning the very foundation of your movement. We must move away from the idea of doing nothing and instead focus on doing the right amount to keep that tissue resilient and ready for the road ahead. Absolute stillness is a deceptive enemy in your recovery journey, and we need to understand how to keep moving without causing further damage.
Now, as we move deeper into the recovery phase, you've probably seen endless debates online about whether modern medical tech actually works for a stubborn Achilles. One popular comment on a running forum caught my eye recently, where a frustrated marathoner wrote, "I spent a fortune on PRP and felt absolutely nothing. It is all just hype." But let's look at the science behind the screen. Think of shockwave therapy not as a painful hammer, but as a biological wake-up call.
When your tendon is stuck in a chronic state of failed healing, these high-energy sound waves create intentional microtrauma.
This isn't about causing damage. It is about tricking your body into restarting the repair process to clear out stagnant, poorly organized tissue. Then there is PRP.
Many of you are asking if it is just expensive blood. Imagine your Achilles as depleted soil. PRP acts like a concentrated organic fertilizer, delivering a massive dose of growth factors to the site.
However, the truth that netizens often miss is that these aren't magic wands. They are catalysts. If you don't combine them with the specific loading protocols we are analyzing, you are essentially buying a high-tech engine for a car that has no wheels. These treatments prepare the environment, but your movement is what builds the strength.
Now, let us look deeper into the invisible hurdle that no one warns you about when dealing with Achilles tendonitis, the silent mental collapse. You see, when you are used to the runner's high, being sidelined feels like losing a piece of your identity. Many of you have likely felt that stinging frustration when your physical progress suddenly plateaus.
As one runner recently shared in an online forum, the hardest part is not the actual physical pain. It is the soul-crushing experience of watching everyone else lace up while you are stuck on the couch, feeling like you are falling behind.
This sentiment is incredibly common. We often see this mental burnout as the body fails to meet the aggressive speed of recovery we have mapped out in our heads. It becomes a psychological tug-of-war.
We find ourselves asking if we will ever run like we used to, or if our best days are behind us. Surely you have wondered the same.
We must recognize that this mental exhaustion is just as real as the inflammation in your heel. If we do not manage this internal narrative and learn to sit with the stillness, we risk rushing back too soon and restarting the whole painful cycle. It is about recalibrating your expectations while your body does the slow work of rebuilding.
Now, let's dive into what many consider the hardest part of the journey, the 12-week road to recovery. It is a grueling test of patience where your mental strength matters as much as your physical resilience. You might be wondering why the timeline is so specific, and it comes down to the biological nature of the Achilles tendon.
Because this tissue has a relatively poor blood supply, healing isn't a sprint, it is a slow, deliberate reconstruction. During those initial weeks, we focus purely on calming the irritation, while the mid-phase is all about reintroducing load through heavy, slow resistance. I remember seeing a comment from a fellow runner that perfectly captured this struggle. They wrote, "I felt like I was losing my identity not being on the road, but then I realized my new race was the recovery itself."
This perspective is vital because managing Achilles tendonitis isn't just about icing the pain. It is about respecting the gradual adaptation of the fibers. Let's look back at the progress made over these 3 months and recognize that every single eccentric heel drop was a building block for a stronger comeback. The community often debates whether you can skip a few weeks if you feel fine, but the consensus among successful survivors of this injury is clear: consistency over intensity.
By managing the load intelligently rather than pushing through the ache, you aren't just treating a symptom, you are mastering the art of injury management and ensuring that when you finally lace up those shoes again, it is for the long run.